What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down why tomorrow is going to be a very important day as we have quadruple witching, which is lots of these options expiring, not to mention new developments on the charts. But just note that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total, not to mention 8.1% APY and access to the Hong Kong markets. It's offered in just 11 days. Check it out before they run out. Anyways, now let's talk about the markets. So we got a very, very nice looking gap up. Yesterday, the technicals looked kind of weak. So I was worried there was a risk of downside, but this was a trap. This was a lot of manipulation by these institutions. And they were planning to turn everyone bearish, especially because we dumped after Jerome Powell's speech, got a very bearish looking daily candlestick, only to gap the market back up. They gapped it up like crazy to trap shorts. So it's very crazy how this could pan out. Technical analysis is accurate the majority of the time. It is correct, but not always. Sometimes there could be abnormalities. Sometimes there could be unexpected catalysts. Sometimes unexpected things could happen. That's part of day trading. That's why you always want to manage risks no matter what. But in this whole process, as we start to see this happen, we saw a big shift in sentiment. A lot of people were expecting the crash to come and this and that. Even I thought there was a risk of downside looking at technicals. But like I said before, we can't always predict every piece of manipulation every single day. Technicals are right the majority of the time, but not always. And in this case, they ended up being a little bit off. So it happened as a form of manipulation because these buyers ended up stepping in. They started pumping Tesla and the market very nicely. So the question is, with this delayed reaction to FOMC, what happens for tomorrow? That's why I want to focus on something very important. So tomorrow is going to be Friday, September 20th, 2024. Notes that at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have Harker from the Fed giving a speech. This might cause some volatility, but besides that, there's not really much data coming out. But there is something very, very important for tomorrow. Tomorrow, we have over 1.1 million of these calls expiring for SPY and over 3 points or just under 3.3 million puts expiring. So that's absolutely insane. A lot of puts are expiring tomorrow. We have 2.87 being the put to call ratio, and we have about a 545 max pain. We'll see what the market makers try. Will they keep pushing the market higher to hurt shorts, or will we see the market end up dipping once again to help the shorts get more in the money and hurt the call holders? Will the market makers turn their view? And then also, is it also possible we just get some kind of like choppy price action just to hurt everyone? We'll just have to wait and see. Now, what I do find interesting is the fact that we have 570 being our strike of interest for tomorrow. So if you look at the options chain, we're seeing a lot of volume and open interest at that 570 strike. So it's an area of interest. And then if you look at other factors like on the put side, the 570 area also has the highest volume. So I think that's a very important area of interest. We might kind of close around that. Maybe it's not a guarantee, though. It depends on what these market makers try to do. But that is indicative of a possible manipulation for tomorrow. I also want to mention that right now the market is greedy. Greed is making up the majority of sentiment. Momentum is also extremely greedy. There's a lot of buyers stepping in, and we're at extreme greed in terms of momentum because of the level we're at. We're well above the 125 daily moving average. So that shows that there's so many buyers who are still present, who have the bigger edge. So we'll see how things go from here. Just want to at least call that out, just to give you guys some updates. On top of this, I just want to mention that we also have the puts and call option ratio is dipping because what's happening is people were shorting the market like crazy, betting on there's going to be some kind of like crash or something. And what happened was, as the market started pushing, a lot of these shorts got squeezed. That's the reason why when you look at the option chain, the majority of puts are out of the money for tomorrow. So people started closing the shorts and they started going long. And that's why we're seeing this really starting to dip as buyers have been stepping into the markets. That's why the ratio is dipping. That's showing us that there are a lot of present buyers so far. And finally, the overall market is looking at a very neutral VIX. It's actually continuing to dip to very, very close to fear territory. The market thinks there's about a 60% chance we get a 25 basis point cut by the Fed in November, and about a 40% chance we get 50 basis points. So we'll see about that. Anyways, what is happening for tomorrow? So tomorrow is going to be very hard to predict, even for me, because I don't know what's going to happen because of quadruple witching. There's going to be a lot of manipulation. So, for example, yesterday, there was so much manipulation that happened. They dumped it when Jerome Powell was speaking, only to give us a gap and a big pump, and then an indecision candle right after. So, that's a form of manipulation you can't always predict. And this is going to be the last time this happens for a while, where it's going to be very tricky to predict this because of all these option expirations. So, you want to be very, very careful. So, here's what you're going to watch for tomorrow. Just to go over the levels first before I break down more details about the charts. If SPY is bullish, you want to see it try to break past 572. If we break through that, we're looking for a big push to higher levels. That could take us all the way up to about 574 to 575. If we're bearish, you want to see SPY lose 568. If 568 fails us, we're going to be dipping all the way down to the 566 area, followed by the gap fill for 565. So I think 565 comes if you lose 568. It's very simple like that. So lose 568, we turn bearish tomorrow. We're looking for that gap fill. It's about the this previous resistance all the way down here around this 565 zone. And if we get to the opposite, if they start breaking us from the highs, we break out past the highs, we're looking for new all-time highs for 575 on SPY. There's an indecision council. The market's indecisive. It's kind of range bound right now. So watch and see which way we break. I do want to note that there is an increased probability of us kind of like pumping and then dumping, and then we might get a close that's very flat at that 570 area just to hurt a lot of the options holders just looking at the options chain. So 570 being the close tomorrow is very probable. A little pump and dump, a lot of sideways price action is a strong possibility. Unless we lose 568, I will change my view. But for now, it looks to me like we're going to pump and dump, see a lot of sideways price action, and maybe get a very flat close just to hurt the options holders. So just want to give that a shout out. Now, I do presume we will eventually break below 568 over the next couple of days to fill that gap. I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow. We just have to wait. But I just want to give you guys a heads up about that. All right. So for ES, we look bullish right now. We're looking at 5,800 as our resistance. If that breaks, we're going all the way up towards 5,825. That's going to be our next target if that breaks. If we end up losing support and we get a rejection off 5,780, we're looking for 5,750 support, followed by the 5,725 area. In my opinion, I think that this is looking a little bit more bullish and wants to hit 5,800 again. We'll see if we could break that or not, but just know it's going to be a very, very tough resistance. So look for a test tomorrow and see if we get a rejection or not. But I think it might try to push a little bit higher as we still look very bullish, technically speaking. We're holding up very, very well. For Nvidia, we're very indecisive. So Nvidia, although we had a flag that was forming, I do want to say I have a concern about it. Right now, Nvidia is not super bullish or not super bearish. We're indecisive. So if you look at how we look on the 4-hour time frame, we have 118 as resistance. If we break this, we're trying to break past 120 to turn bullish. If we reject off 118, we're looking at support at this 115 zone, like 115.26, for example. If we lose the 115s, we're looking for that gap fill all the way down to the 114s or lower. So we'll see which way it goes. Do we reject and end up losing 115 to start dipping back down to these low levels? Or do we break past 120 to remain bullish? We'll just have to wait and see. It is possible we dip a little bit and then try to make a higher low. So watch and see if support holds. Tomorrow, it looks like Nvidia is going to dip a little bit to try to test these EMAs, maybe try to bounce. So we'll see if it bounces off these EMAs or if it comes down to the gap fill and then bounces. But look for a little bit of a dip on this. Looks a little bit weak right here, considering how the close ended up leading to a dip. So we'll see how it goes. There might be a dip and then we'll see if we bounce. For Bitcoin, we were looking bullish. We did go all the way up to the imbalance. We had an imbalance to fill all the way up towards 64,000. We did touch that, but now it's slowing down a little bit. It might dip a little bit tomorrow morning to hit 62,000 before it tries to rebound. And then we might just see a lot of sideways price action in the 62,000 area. But there could be a small dip on Bitcoin before it continues to pump later on. So watch for that. In terms of Tesla, we're doing a good job at holding up. We have a nice accumulation structure. We have that gap to fill around 246. I think tomorrow it's going to try to go a little higher. It might try to grab liquidity up here at like 246 or so. And we need a bullish catalyst for this to continue. If we hit 246 and we don't break through that, we could be looking for a rejection and move back down towards like 238 all over again. So I'm thinking it's going to push a little bit higher, maybe dip just a little bit before it tries to continue higher next week. So it might push higher for that gap fill, then might dip a little bit after that. Make sure you watch 244 as resistance. If we break that, we're going to fill the gap up to that about the 246 area. And if we lose 240, we're looking for a dip to 238. Like I said before, we should be looking for a little bit of a pop tomorrow, maybe a dip, a lot of sideways price action like this, maybe a little bit of downside. That's going to be very, very favorable. But then I don't think it's going to be that bad. It's just a little cool off before we try to continue higher next week. That's the most likely case in my opinion. For the QQQ, we look, not the QQQ, NQ, we hit my target of 20,200. If that broke, we're looking for basically 20,373 to almost 20,400. If we lose 20,000 flat, we're looking for 19,800. So I think what's going to happen is we basically dip a little bit. I think we could try to rebound and eventually retest 20,000. We'll see if we hold 20,000 or not to rebound. If we lose that, we're looking for a dip. I'm thinking it might actually lose this and come back down to 19,800 and bounce again for a small dip, and there might be some consolidation after that. And there is still upside potential for it later on. Just might see a small dip tomorrow before anything else. For the QQQ, I think that this is showing some signs that it might slow down. This depends on the levels. If we break 485, we're looking for a push for 488. And if we end up rejecting, if we get this rejection off 482 and we don't break through that, we're looking for this gap support to be tested very, very close to this 480 area. So 480 is likely going to be coming. If that fails us, we're looking for the gap support at 478, followed by the gap fill down to 475. In my opinion, we kind of pumped a bit. We're kind of dipping right now. So I think what the QQQ is going to do is if we don't break past 485, there might be a dip back down towards 480, and we'll see if we hold that or not. If it doesn't hold, we will be coming back down to fill this gap. So watch for that very carefully. For Aapl, we push very nicely. It is possible we try to go a little higher as we look bullish, but there's going to be some tough resistance between 230 and 232. I want to give you guys a heads up about that. That has given Aapl some problems for many, many weeks. So I think we could be testing 230, if not 232, that range. Then we could be dipping back down to about 228 and continue to consolidate in that range. Look for a little bit more upside than a move back down. So watch and see how things end up going. With that being said, I'm going to go over the rest of these and be kind of quick with this. So Palantir kind of dipped a little bit. It got a nice push to 37. We're barely holding support at 36.11. If we hold this, we look for a rebound. If we lose this 20 EMA support, we're dipping down to 35. My gut is telling me it's looking a little bit weaker off the bearish divergence. It might dip down towards 35. So just be very, very careful. For Super Micro, we're dipping a little bit right over here. We kind of pumped and dumped. So we're kind of flat right now. So you want to break past 450 to turn bullish. If we don't break that, we're going to be likely dipping back down to about 425. I think the odds favor 425 looking at that imbalance and the fact that we underperform compared to Nvda and the markets. So we might be looking for 425 very soon. For Rivian, I just want to mention that Rivian has been holding up nicely, but the issue is we got this rejection on the 4-hour time frame. We also have this gap all the way down here, taking us into the 12s. But I think what's going to happen is we pumped in dumps today, and there's going to be a little bit more downside. I think we might be dipping towards 13 tomorrow. We'll see if 13 holds. If it doesn't hold, we could be dipping back down towards 12.8. So look for a dip towards 13 flat, a little bit of a dip, and we'll see if we hold. But I find that's to be very, very probable. For so far, we're dipping a little bit more right over here. We have this resistance to watch for around this 8.25 area. If we continue to fall, we're looking for basically 8.06 as support, followed by 8.01. I think that SoFi is starting to dip a little bit. It did push very, very nicely, but now it's cooling off. So it might be retesting the 20 EMA. So 8.01 may be tested. We'll see if we bounce off that or not. I think we might be coming down to this EMA and we'll see how it ends up reacting. So that's going to be our target. The IWM is completely indecisive. If we break past 226, we're bullish. We're looking for 228. If we lose 222, we could be tipping back down to 220 or lower. We have that gap to fill, so I presume we're just going to be trading sideways in a range in the 220 area, and we could be dipping closer to 220 all over again. I think we might pop a bit to 225, then dip back down, continue to consolidate, and then we'll see how things end up going from here. For AMD has this nice little wick that's forming here, showing a little bit of weakness. If we're bullish, you want to see it hold above 156. If that holds, we're looking for 158. And if we end up getting rejection, we lose 155. We're looking for a dip back down towards this area right here, the 153s. So we'll see what AMD does. As of right now, it got a little rejection here, but it's still looking bullish. It could try to push a little bit higher. There might be an attempt, and we have to see if it holds or not. Can we hold and sustain this level? I think that there's an inverse head and shoulders setup, so it is possible. It did reach the high already, so it's possible it tries to go for the high again before it comes back down. So look for a little bit of a pop and drop on AMD. It looks a little bit different, so we'll see how it goes. For ARM, we have kind of like a double top structure showing some weakness as we have that gap to fill. So I think we're going to be visiting our 20 EMA. Look for 139.17 to be tested tomorrow. If we hold that, we're looking for a bounce. If we lose that, we're going to be looking for a dip. And that will take us all the way down to 135. So I think 139.17 gets tested, the lower 139s. And then we could be looking for a dip below that if that ends up failing. So if that level fails, there's going to be more downside. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up about that. Now, I want to call out that Coinbase is not looking that great. We pumped nicely. It was great, but then we rejected. So it was a pump and dump move. The issue I see is that we have this big gap down here. I think that if we don't hold 167, we're going to come down to fill the gap at 166. I mean, we might not just stop there. We might be coming all the way down to 164.5 for a little cool off before it tries to bounce again. So I'm thinking there might be a little bit of a pullback that's coming to coin, especially if we lose our 50 EMA. And this may be dictated by Bitcoin. I was saying that Bitcoin may dip a little bit too. Bitcoin had a very similar trend where it pumped and dumped. So this is kind of following it. So I think this might dip a little bit and get very close to that gap fill. So give it some time to develop and we'll see how things go from there. For others out there, I just want to mention that if we continue to fall, we're looking for that gap fill. For Amazon, we are dipping a little bit. We could be looking for this gap down here to get filled. Amazon hit 191. It was awesome to see that rally, but the problem is Amazon was not able to crack past 191 to get all the way up to about 192.75. So 191 is a tough resistance. If we don't break that, I think we come back down to fill that gap towards 188. If we do break 191, I will remain more bullish. This is forming kind of like a cup and handle. So I might get a little bit of a cool off before it gets bought up again. I'm not saying the market's dumping. I'm just saying there's a little bit of a cool off that could be coming before the market tries to bounce. So look for this gap to fill tomorrow. There's some sideways price action. I find that's to be very, very probable. For Meta, we're doing a good job at holding up. It's been pushing very nicely. It still looks bullish to me, especially when you look at the daily time frame. But I do see an issue. The issue with Meta is that we're at some very, very tough resistance at 560 area. So that's going to be acting as a stubborn level, in my opinion. So look for 560. Can we hold above that? If we hold this, we're going up to 565. If we reject on 560, we could be tipping back down to 555. We are currently stuck in the middle, going back and forth between these levels. So I think we could be hitting 560, and we'll see if we end up tipping back down to 555. So you have to be very patient nonetheless. So look for 560. If we hit this level, we could be dipping back down. So I think that this could be dipping back down to 555. If 560 does not break, and there's a risk of that, it's going to be a very stubborn level. So be very careful at that zone. For Microsoft, we pushed very, very nicely up to about 442.5, only to come back down to 440. And we didn't close above 440, so it's not the best of signs. I want to see this close above 440 for us to remain bullish. Because we didn't do that, there is a risk of it dipping, so please be very careful with that. Um, if we reclaim 440 tomorrow, yes, we could consolidate in this range, but I'm looking at this gap down here. I think we might be coming back down to fill that for 434. Then we could try to rebound. So there might be a little dip coming, guys, so be a little bit careful with the markets. For Google, it's the same setup, okay? We didn't break this resistance. When you close these, you'll see that we basically have a very, very tight level up here. We hit our 200 EMA on the 4-hour time frame. Google did a very, very good job at getting that breakout, but the issue is we were not able to hold above that. So we haven't been able to break this 200 EMA. It's a tough resistance. If we manage to break 165, we turn bullish, but right now it's looking very unlikely. It looks to me like this might fail. And I think what's going to happen is we come back down to fill this gap towards 162. I think there might be a small dip coming. If that does not hold us, we're coming back down towards 159. That's going to be our 20 EMA. So look for some potential downside on Google. For a couple more, we have DJT. DJT is also dipping a little bit. We have like a double top. I think we're going to dip a little bit more. I think that this is looking kind of weak right here. Like I was saying yesterday, DJT remained very weak. So we're looking for 14 to be tested. If that does not hold, we may continue to fall. When you look at, for instance, the weekly time frame, we are continuing to dip as well. So I think what's happening is we're going to continue to fall, and I think this will take us all the way down towards this 12.5 area. So unfortunately, DJT looks kind of bearish. I'm continuing to see more downside potential in it. That could lead to more of a dip. For others out there like the VIX, I just want to call out the VIX is looking kind of bearish. The week looks kind of weak. For the 4-hour time frame on the VIX, we are still looking kind of weak. So this suggests that the market may attempt to go a little bit higher. Maybe the VIX will come down to fill this gap. Maybe the market gets a little pop tomorrow, but then if this gets a bounce, we'll see how it goes. We're also at the support on the VIX, so will it bounce first and then it drops? Could the market cool off a little bit first and then we get a big bounce in the markets as we still have that gap to fill below? Or will the market bounce first and then drop? It's got to be one of those two most likely, depending on what the VIX does. My gut's starting to tell me the market may dip a little bit and then we get a bounce later on because the VIX still has that gap to fill. So there might be a little cool off tomorrow, but the market could still bounce later. We'll see if that ends up being the case. I'm just waiting to see how the VIX develops. And then we have the 10-year, which is pushing for that 3.775 area. If this breaks out a little bit higher, that could be a bearish signal, followed by the dollar index, which is holding up. We're barely holding support around this 100.5 area. Notice we hit this, we bounced, hit this, bounce, hit this, bounce, hit this, bounced. We like to bounce off that 100.5 area. If we bounce off this again, this could be a sign that the market may cool off just a little bit. But if we lose that support, that's going to be a significant dip on the dollar, which would signify more upside for the markets. So in my opinion, I think tech is looking like it might cool off. We might see a little bit of a dip tomorrow, maybe, But like I said before, it's a little tricky for me to be very certain because it depends on what the market makers try to do. It also depends on all the option chain, excuse me, all these different options expiring for tomorrow. So you have to be very careful. So as far as the market goes, I think that SPY is going to see a lot of sideways price action, but we might see the QQQ a little bit weaker because of the fact that we're up so big and the market is at some new levels. So it's not surprising if the market cools off a little bit. And also because of how tech is looking, so there might be a little cool off. We'll see. I'm going to be very patient nonetheless, though. I think the market's going to hold up decently. I'm not saying it's crashing or anything like that. There's just going to be a small cool off. We have a lot of gaps to fill below, so that might be what we end up seeing first before the market bounces again and continues to pump once again to new highs. All right, so I hope that's as clear as possible. There could be a little dip coming, but then the market could always bounce again and hit new highs. So watch and see how things end up developing. I thank you all so much for listening. Please have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you, and peace out.